Thanks for the invitation. Thanks also to Melanie for the very good discussion before we had. It's really an honor to talk to you here. It's the second time. As David also explained, we met at the Bits and Bytes Society event. I think it was in September last year, and it was really a great discussion. So I'm really looking forward to your points and your experiences. As I can see here, you have got a lot of interaction points with automotive, so it should be a really lovely and actively discussion. So myself, I'm Daniel Niederberger. As David already introduced, I'm in the automotive industry for over 15 years now. Most of the time I spent with the modern stuff, so the new technology issues, bringing innovation to market, developing new strategies, helping companies to get funding, to get a proper organization model which fits for the future, and helping them to be overall successful in the future. And as you all know, and all you can read in the newspapers, there is a huge change to come, or we are in the middle of the change, and this is what we will discuss for today. And to make this a little bit easier for you, I've prepared some presentation, which I will show you. No. Not really working.
Bildschirm freigeben, oder? Und dann
So,
Präsentation auswählen.
das geht, genau.
Ja, da kommt's.
So,
Here we go.
Good. Here we go. Yeah, Malt Academy. Thanks again. Yeah, as I said, a long time in the industry, expert advisory, strategic development. I also wrote 2 books which are dealing about the automotive transformation and about digital business models in the mobility scene. And I will also show you that, so you have a short perspective into that. What is my company doing? New Mobility Business was founded in 2015. Just a short overview. It's a management consulting and advisory company, and is basically clustered into two business sections, which is one of them is overall strategy and operations. So make the companies more fit for the future in a perspective of strategic outlook, of business modeling, of innovations, how bring innovations to market, how to set up partnerships, enabling digital business models, and also, which is getting more and more important because of the change, the transformation of the companies. So how you can be fit in the future from all economic aspects. And on the second side, this is the future mobility aspect, which is clustered in a technology section. So what technologies might be useful for you, what are market ready, what players are on the market, how can your portfolio look like? Really, really important are cooperation models to set up and to manage. And for sure, all the market stuff. So what are players doing? What is more foreseeable? What is more promising in the future? It's there's not really one answer to that. So that's a really huge, crowded, foggy wall, and I will bring with my company some insights into that way. So this is just for the overview what I'm doing about, and we will now start about the digital mobility, key trends, and the way forward. And we will start with a short look back. I think a short look back in history is always very good. You can see also here the Le Mans picture from France. So also some homage to Malt in that perspective. And we will now look back to 100 years of automotive history. You all have your own experience with that, you know. Great moments you enjoyed, great holidays, your personal business cars, your configuration, what you want. Think about the movie stuff. You see a lot of cars. Think about the racing history and all of the personal moments we all have with those industry. It's a really huge industry, and Germany especially has shaped it to a really, really high professional level in many, many aspects, from technology, from commercial side, from supplier side, from development side, but also from the brand perspective. So currently, the premium sector, which is the most financially interesting market in automotive, which is only about 10% of the world market, is to 80% in the German brands perspective. So it's a really, really great sector we have developed with technology, with engineering, but also with a lot of emotion and brand. And this is a very, very good market position we have here, especially the German companies, which we built up in the last time, but which is now coming to a lot of changes. Yeah. And just to show this to you, I put the BMW poster here inside. Freude ist BMW, which is about, I think it's 8 or 9 years old, which showed it really, really to a high extent what the industry is all about. It's not only about technology, but it's also a lot about emotion and passion. And we all have our personal memories with that. And this is now going to change significantly. I think you have all seen this personally. You have experienced this personally in the companies, and you can read it also in newspapers day by day. And to get this a little bit more clear, I tried to set up some Mentimeter. So it would be great if you now go to the Menti.com page and use the code 385334 and just answer the question. You have 3 possibilities to write in some words. What do you expect the mobility will look like in the future? And so we have now the opportunity to see what your expectations, your assumptions are, and can look that in a very live perspective.
Just as a recap for everybody, open www.menti.com and then type in the code. The code is 385334.
Yes, right. And the question is, how do you expect mobility will look like in the future? And you will see three boxes which you can type in some personal expectations or assumptions you might have. I will now switch to the Mentimeter page, and so that we all have the possibility to see what you all have in your mind about that. So, do you see it? Oh, sorry.
Yes, it works.
It's a little bit small, but I think it should be possible. Yes.
Daniel, can you recap the code? I don't have it in my mind.
It's a 38, sorry.
I'll put it in the chat.
Why doesn't it work? It's just a second. It's
385334.
Right, 385334. Right. That's a little bit too large here. So that's very interesting. Oh, that's a very broad, holistic view you all have here. A lot of associations you mentioned. Okay. Very, very interesting. It seems like it's changing a lot. Okay, you're quite active here. Very good. And we've also a huge increase in participants, I can see now. Very, very good. Okay. So a very diverse picture, but overall, you will rate the stuff electric and climate, CO2 neutral, very high, shared, very high. And then a lot of other stuff, which is maybe can be clustered also as well. It's a little bit about economics and technical stuff, digital and hydrogen, I would assume also to technical, faster. That's interesting what the people mean with faster. So faster cars or faster connection, maybe that we don't have to wait.
I see also autonomous and driverless here in the bottom on the left. It's also quite interesting.
It's also driverless, yes, simplified.
I see multimodal. Maybe that's relating to the discussion that we see in the US, basically when going on trains and these kind of things.
Yeah. Cost efficient, so cost driven, energy driven, less ownership I can see here, more diverse, more shared, digital friendly. Oh, that's interesting. Carefree. Okay, it's a very diverse, but I think it's really a high numbers in sustainable mobility, I would say, and in new use cases, which is affecting to use and also to the digital stuff. Very interesting. Okay, the sharing stuff comes more on top. Yeah, that's interesting. We will refer to all of these topics because they are more or less relevant for the future. And I will now switch back to our presentation. Can you see this now again?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, we need to share it. So, okay, now it should run.
Now it works, yes.
Okay, so very thanks for your participation here. That's interesting. And as you also see at your very diverse results, there will be not the only answer. There are a lot of influencing factors. You also see that, which will affect the mobility itself from a production service point, but also from a use cases point. And as you know, we have in the last 10 years, we have the case stuff. I think you are aware of that. The case stuff means the connected, the autonomous, the shared, and the electric. These are basically the 4 mega trends affecting the mobility. I think it was defined by the former Daimler CEO, Mr. Zetsche, I think in 2015. And this is the summary of the big trends in automotive, which we have now. If we think from today's point a little bit on top, we will have this scenario, which is quite interesting for the future. As I told you today, the case stuff, connected, autonomous, shared, electric. But if we think this a little bit further, and this is just 5 years ago, we will have some aggregation of business models. We will have for sure the left side, which will be still a driver-owned car. For sure, it will be electric driven, it will be fully digital, it will be maybe for sharing, but just with your friends or your family, but it would be mostly exclusively for you. This will be the business cars, the management cars, the premium sector, cars you really want to own, which is not really affecting, you don't want to share this really. This is your personal stuff, your personal feelings, your personal configuration you get. And this is basically developing and rising up from today's premium sector. So if you see in the premium sector, the Daimler, BMWs or Volvos are still in those segments and will for sure develop this further on. In the end, those cars will also have the technology to drive more or less autonomously. I think you know maybe the different stages from level 1 to 5, but more and more towards a level 5 direction. This is the one side. This is really a really realistic case in Northern America, in Europe, and in China, on the coastlines in China, and for still in other developed markets like Japan or the Arabian region and the Gulf area. On the right-hand side, we have the mobility as a service concept. Let me explain this a little bit to you. Maybe this is not so easy to get at the moment. Cars are more and more getting expensive. Not only about the car prices, but also because of insurance, because of the parking in the cities, And also many cities abandon cars. So they don't want to have them in the city because of parking, the jams, and also the climate effect. So many people will still have lose the interest or don't even have the money anymore to have their own car, especially in very urban areas. And with the development of the mobility as a service sections, which are for today, like here shown in the example, Moja or Uber, are with a driver, but in the end will be, as the Volvo showed here, driverless, enable you to have your personal individual mobility without owning a car. This is a really new development. For sure, we know this all from the taxis, because taxis are the same and they're pretty old, but taxi is very expensive. Why? Taxi is expensive because you have one guest and one driver and one car. It's a really bad misbehavior. So if you have in the Moja case, maybe a shuttle service with 6 or 7 seats inside and one driver, it's a much better business case. And also this will cause cheaper transaction prices for you. And in the end, if the driver is finally away or replaced by autonomous technology, this is even more attractive. So these two business models, and there's a pretty high commitment of experts in the system and in the automotive sector, will have at the same time their existence, especially in developed countries. For sure, in not so developed countries, China, rural side, India, and so on, BRIC states, if you think also about Brazil, will have the entry cars left. Easy cars, the world cars like the Golf and so on, will be still existing for those markets. But for Western developed markets, those two business models will have the predominance in the future. And this is, as you might imagine, a fundamentally different approach to offer and also to produce those services. So the company which needs to provide this also needs to be set up in a very different way. If you think about first on the left-hand side, the premium cars, the emotional stuff, still a product-focused business, full of technology, latest design, brands, emotional cars, the showroom experience, maybe some traveling tours with your car. And also, as you see here, the young lady with the Porsche, also the historic cars. Pretty important, because they're shaping the brand from a tradition to the future. Those cars are living because of technology, brand, and status. Although in those sectors, very good margins have been achieved in the past, I'm talking now before Corona crisis, because this is a little bit a cutoff here, and we will discuss this on Wednesday in the second webinar more. But still today, the margins in those segments are much higher than in the mass market segment. But also to achieve this, the companies have some pressure on financials. So more and more functions which are done in the past with some hardware stuff are now produced as functions on demand, we say. Easy to explain, functions on demand is the same as your phone. You buy your iPhone and there has almost no software when you buy it. And all the stuff which comes on top are you downloading from the app shops. And then you have your personal configured iPhone for your personal need. And you don't need any different hardware, because the hardware changes only in the display size at Apple. It's quite easy. Automotive companies are doing the same at the moment. You can see this in the last 2-3 years to make as much as they can a standardized hardware. Especially Tesla is pretty good at that. Porsche and Mercedes are going also in that direction, also Volkswagen Group, to enable many functions, even in a cheaper way, and even if the car is still on the road. So you can add on different services during your time of use, during the weekend, during holiday. And this is very much different from today because you have the opportunity to earn money permanently and not only in an asset sale business, as we say, to sell the car or to lease it, to rent it. It's basically about the same. But with functions on demand, you have a permanent subscription fee, which is changing the business a lot. It makes for sure, makes you able to update the car, and you have a permanent revenue stream over the time, even if the car has the second or third user. So on this side, pretty much you need best experts, brand affine people, emotional people, very smart people in software and hardware technology. And also the production is not that easy. And you need also have a lot of experience to guarantee that. As you might know, the right-hand side is totally different. The right-hand side is a transaction business. Transactions are all the time new ones. So you don't need to be loyal. You choose all the time a different. You can choose a different taxi, you can choose a different rental company. Think also about the airline business. You can choose a different airline if you want. You don't need to be loyal. So there's a fundamentally different business concept. And this is much more referring to your personal interface, your personal service. At this time, at the moment, at that price, your best convenient solution. And this is for sure not any more product focused as still the left side is, even if it's more digital. It's much more mobility focused. So your decision why you choose it is more and more a convenient and mobility aspect.
I think I have a question maybe that's relating to this one.
Okay.
Somebody who's, I think, not shown his name here asks, well, does that mean, or it implies that basically society or individuals need to adapt to that change? They have to change the way they behave. Who do you think will drive that change? How will it happen?
Maybe it's also a question that people have to adapt, but usually people drive those change. So if you think today, if you think in America or in China, the Uber stuff has about 15 or 20% of the whole mobility market on roads. This is even today, it's a huge number. So this is not anymore a very small niche. If you think also we have the train, which is going to that way, the Flixbus we have in Germany, which is a huge amount of people transporting. So people are really much demanding that because of convenience, of higher flexibility, and even according to a cost structure. So currently this is in a very stable market phase and is still growing. For sure, the right-hand side is very much driven by Uber. Uber is experimenting a lot of stuff and for still is not profitable. Yes, I know, and maybe the crisis will cause also some problems to them. But the idea behind is still a very high market acceptance. So even today, people accept it, especially in rural areas. And there's a parallel society. So people do use that, but for sure people have their own cars. So this will not diminish to zero. This is not a zero-sum game. This is just the market structure will change. So there will be always people having their own car, but it will be less interesting to have your own car. Mostly interesting if you're on the left-hand side here, because this is still very a want-to-have product as today. And if more and more costs decline on the right-hand side, and biggest costs are the drivers, so this is why so much energy is put into autonomous driving. Because if you can eliminate here the driver, it's a relatively simple calculation, you can achieve transaction prices which are in the Western world about the metro and trams. Very, very cheap. So still today, interesting for many people, but I think according to price development, private cars goes up. This one will go down. It will be a higher shift in the future.
Maybe I have another question that relates a bit to that. Stefan Voigt, I think, asks, how can we achieve better mobility if we do not reduce the total number of cars, driver-owned or even autonomous? Does that help actually to solve this problem? I think the first question we have to ask, does better mobility mean more sustainable mobility? I think that's a bit the question here. So do you expect that, especially maybe here on the right-hand side, this will lead to fewer cars overall?
In the end, yes, slower, because a shuttle can carry 5 or 6 people. Even if you think only 3 or 4 are driving, you have 3 or 4 driving in one shuttle and not 1.5 as we have it in Munich usually, or 1.2. So this will lead that cars will get reduced, not today, but over a long time. Even maybe the Zweithandwagen, the second cars at the households will reduce. And also for those people who will use currently their car on their own. Yes, for sure, there's a problem that some people also say, okay, I don't want to choose the metro anymore. I will choose this because this is much more convenience. Yes, there's a probability, and there will be also a shift that people will go into that direction. If you think from a more sustainable aspect, for sure there will be all electric driven. This is more or less granted in the future. And even the energy consumption, even if it's green energy, is much less if you have a shuttle vehicle than your own car. So I think in the end, it will lead to fewer cars. And also this is what the cities want to have. The cities are also pushing that way.
I mean, I can personally speak about my car. I admit I have a car, yes. And I can also admit that it's idle 98 to 99% of the time. So 88 to 89% of the time I'm not driving it. And it's standing in the garage. It has a beautiful garage and it's standing there. So I think in that sense, out there are many cars in the streets. This is something that can also be optimized probably with these kind of transactional business models, I guess.
Yeah, for sure, David, you're totally right. There's also the question of how many parking spaces do we need, how many fueling stations, and so on. And these are also major questions pushed by the cities. Also in the Western cities, we have in London, maybe you know it, they have a entry city tax of I think 11 or 12 pounds per day from the bank area and the city financial district, which is really, if you do this every day, this is really a huge amount comes on top, even to very high parking prices in the cities. And so in London, basically, the penalty for driving in and the parking is more expensive than some leasing rates of the car. And this is the change we have.
And that basically drives apart the costs for an individual to either go with the right business model or the left business model, right?
Right.
And Julie is asking here, what do you think about the fact that more and more cities are banning cars? That's exactly what you say here. I think that's the first step. How will car brands try to counteract this?
Oh, interesting question. So cities will favor the right part and the left part will be done with penalty. So it would be in the end, maybe very, very expensive to drive in. So the costs will reduce supply and demand the cars. The brands, for sure, all the premium brands have a strong emphasis on their joy of driving, on the luxury of your individualism, on your status. And this is really, really a huge change we need to face. Because the usually defined slogans are not really that strong anymore. And there's really, I've done some workshops with the companies. What is premium in the future? Question mark. Let's discuss. What is driving pleasure in the future? Question mark. And it's not so easy to answer because it's not obvious. And if you think about the BMW example, BMW is still marketed in Germany and in US also as driving machine, as driving pleasure. And if you think in China, BMW is marketing his cars as the digital car. So about the same cars are sold and imaged in a different way. Very interesting, I think. Could be a way.
Yeah.
But yes, they can lose in that case. That's really an issue. They can lose. That's also why they build up those classic centers and brand centers and so on to keep these visions alive. And if you have had a strong heritage in the past, it will help you a lot more to provide these brand issues and brand values to the future. If you haven't had this brand images and brand strengthness even today, as think about many Japanese brands have, or also some Italian brands, it will be very, very difficult in the future to get this even more. But for sure, you have the possibility to pronounce different aspects in the future. Yeah.
I think there's a very interesting and exciting question from Yannick following up on that. And I think that maybe also shows a bit the difference between the business models. His question is maintenance service and safety other trends are you going to talk about? With AI, we can imagine that cars will be able to anticipate breakdowns before it really happens and save money to the owner and avoid accidents. And I think, maybe you can explain a bit what service would look like and what the business model of service could look like in those two cases.
Oh, interesting. I like your questions. So AI will play a big role in both of the cases for sure. And yes, predictive maintenance is even today possible with very good cars, and will play an even larger role in the future. It's still very present in the truck business because all the time the truck doesn't run, costs you money. And there's really a way, it's quite close to be realized, that you have a predictive maintenance automatically contacted to your dealership. So some data will get provided automatically, and you can get in touch with them and talk with them. Is it really a big problem? Can we do it later? Do we need it now? And can you get me the best appointment date and order the parts before I'm arriving at your place? So this is really gonna be optimized. Even today, it's relatively good, but it can be with the help of AI even much better. And also, if you think about commercial cars, which is the right-hand side here, this will have an even larger effect. Yes, so the service and dealership will also fundamentally change. But also interesting, in the right-hand side here, there will be different interiors, for example. So the dealership might have a second income stream to change out some interiors according to different use cases, or to refurbish the cars after some years. So totally different business opportunities as we have it today.
Maybe to add, also from my experience, when you have a transactional business model, it's also possible that you design the vehicle in the first place to optimize for total cost of ownership. So basically, you design a vehicle such that you have to maintain the minimum, because potentially, depending on who is the fleet owner, the car producing company, BMW, Mercedes, whoever is it, has to pay for the maintenance. Whereas on the left-hand side, historically, I think all of the automotive production companies made a handsome margin on spare parts, on service. So I think also there, potentially, there's a different business model behind it as well.
Totally right. Totally right, David. Margins in after sales and spare part is usually 3 times to 4 times the margin of new cars. It's huge. And many dealers are still alive because of selling used cars and doing the service, maintenance, and repairing business. This is really a big margin, because this is just an easy question. Even if used cars and some repairing stuff, it's very difficult to compare it. Is it really the part needs to be changed? Is it a bigger problem, a smaller problem? Has the car, the used car, really those kilometers or not? It's different, very difficult to compare. If you buy new cars, it's just one specification. That's quite easy. So that's why margins in new cars are much lower than in dealerships. And yes, for sure. On the left-hand side, usually the private person is paying for the service and the spare parts, and the right-hand side will be a much more commercial business. So there's also an interesting strategic mix on the right-hand side. who is doing what in that business. So that's still more or less open. So there will be for sure companies to produce the cars, companies to produce the interior stuff, companies to operate, provide the platform, and so on. So this is more or less open. We can see some developments in the market. So Uber has just a technology platform. Flixbus has also a lot of big data measurement, calculating the best routes and the best pricing. This is their competence. And for sure, also somebody will buy and operate the cars or build the cars. Could be like Volkswagen, as we see here in Moja, because they do it also for a long time. Could be also some new player. And there are also some startups for those business in US and in China. And that's a totally different market. And yes, the refurbishing stuff also could be an opportunity if the car is some years in service. Any more to that, David?
No more questions, at least not from my side, unless there's nobody else in the chat right now, at least.
Okay, so we will switch some further. It's not only the business models who are changing, but also the playground is changing. Think about the past. We have had an OEM building the car, and we have some suppliers. Suppliers providing parts, development, construction, advisory, and some legal and brand stuff, and so on, some marketing agencies. Very, very easy to understand and very easy to handle because all the players have their specific defined role. Now, and even more in the future, this will be the playground. Totally different as today. For sure, we have still, as you can see in the middle, a BMW as OEM who will bring the cars to market and will have also some suppliers, as you see here at Bosch. This will be for sure the same. But there are some more coming up. We discussed already about the operational model. And you can see here Flixbus is still operating in America and in not only in Europe, but also in Northern Africa. And he's very good at that. Yeah, he's very good in operating cars. And he also is that a large user that he can also write some specifications to maybe Mercedes or Volkswagen and say, okay, for my use case, which I have got those and those data of use of the car, of the daytime use of the people who are inside, I will need those and those requirements. Please build me those cars and I will buy you some XYZ numbers. So requirements now come not only from single customers, but also from large operators. This is also a market behavior we still know from the airline business. So big airlines also make a lot of requirements to the aircraft manufacturers to build what they really need. And we have for sure the mobility providers as the Ubers we already discussed. But think about the energy, yeah? The future of mobility will be for sure electric. There's no doubt on that. There will be also a market for battery-driven cars and also for hydrogen-driven cars. But still, for both of these propulsions, you will need not fuel. So the infrastructure is totally different. And this is, we are currently discussing only about installing some charging units. But this is only one question. The question is also who is providing the energy management, integrating renewables, using it with battery storage systems, which also is a huge business case in the future. And there will different players. And they will also talk about you, how to use the battery inside, cycling and so on. And if you think, yes, here the Hong Kong picture on the right hand, the cities will have a really huge impact because the cities, most of the cities don't want the single cars anymore. They want more and more mass transportation. And I would say mobility solutions which will avoid overall traffic and avoid the place they need to provide. Because if you have seen in Los Angeles, there's the major highway, there's 10 lines in one direction. Yeah, this is crazy. 4 lines to San Francisco, 4 lines to the city of Los Angeles, and the rest 2 lines to the airport. Yeah, this is really huge. We can't, I don't think we can't build any more roads. This is crazy, and it's in China the same. And also think about the the small scooters in the cities. There's also some experimenting how to get the people from the car to more public and more sharing solutions. And this is the same as you also mentioned here in the Menti expression. And if you think about the left-hand side, huge chances and huge disruptions bring up startups. The Sono Motors, maybe you know it, it's a startup from Munich, building an electric car which can be charged with solar panels. Really, really interesting concept. And they did a crowdfunding campaign in the early 2020 to get about 50 million euros just over crowdfunding to be able to develop the car and bring it not totally to market. They will need some more money, but this was still a huge success for money. It's attractive for money to be spent in new technology, green technology. And also the air taxis, yeah, Lilium, Volocopter, and so on. Totally new approaches. Why are they coming up? Yes, because a lot of technologies have reached a good maturity. That's really important to know. I think the slide is not in here.
Before we move on, Daniel.
Questions? Yes.
I have one question, or Julien has one question. Thank you, Julien. Okay. He says, what about driverless cars? Will they really become common and a part of our culture and society? What's your perspective on that?
Yes, but to a slower, in a slower way as we thought some years ago. Autonomous driving technology is really very, very difficult because you have so many influencing factors you need to be aware of. And this is also a very difficult technical question, data communication, and also a responsibility insurance question. And for sure, according to current crisis, and this will be on the later edge of development stages. At first, it will come to the most easiest case. This is highway driving and for trucks. Quite easy, just highway straightforward, and you don't need the driver anymore, or the driver can be partially be outside, so he can maybe use he can do some different freight logistics tasks during the driving, and it's just to integrate the driving for some minutes every hour. This will be the most relevant part because you have an easy use case. Truck is driving 12 to 16 hours every day, and you need usually 2 drivers per truck because of the sleeping times. This is a huge reduction in cost. The second case will be, think about the premium left-hand side, the very luxurious vehicle who drive a lot of kilometers every day, usually the management guys on the highway. And then the robo-taxis we all want to have in the cities will be, sadly, the latest. Because the city is the complexiest environment you can think of. People, traffic lights, dogs on the street, bicycles, and so on. And there's a huge problem to get all this done from a calculation aspect, from a data communication. So this will be maybe 7 years, 8 years ahead, I think. Still, it's possible today in America. I know there are field approaches, but they're all within 1 square kilometer. And the computers are really huge.
And I mean, besides all the technical aspects, I think there's always the human, right? I mean, I don't know how I would feel personally, sitting in a car that's taking over everything that I should be doing. I don't know, maybe you can say in the chat whether you would be happy to do it or not. And for me, I mean, I would probably have to test it, I must admit, before I probably wouldn't dare. But maybe you can say in the chat whether you would be fine or not to, drive in a self-driving car.
Yeah, it would be interesting what your opinion on that is. In fact, we do the same today. If you think about, we are in an airplane, which the pilot is flown, or the computer do it today, or even the train. So we have some awareness on that. But I think on the road, it might be really a huge psychological stuff, I think. So this is still a mental task. But as you see here, different playground, different players, more discussion, more creativity, and we will have a more diverse picture on mobility. In the past, it was purely automotive based. Now it's more mobility based from all perspectives. I think this will lead for sure for better solutions. Where's the money in the next time? Yeah, for sure, in the digital stuff. This is also, you can see here on the left-hand side, my latest book on that, on-demand car services, about how to earn money with digital stuff in the car. Hardware has gone down from a complexity and from a margin point over the years. I think you are aware of that. You can see it also currently at the Corona crisis. Stocks of hardware companies have fallen twice as much as from digital companies. Very interesting to see. And this will be also the future in automotive. So all of the stuff which is about services, like car as a service, mobility as a service, providing and maintaining the stuff will be a good business. And also all of the digital stuff. So the functions on demand, the charging functions for 1 day, for 2 days, the leasing stuff, the upgrade stuff, the download stuff, the convenience stuff. Think about concierge services or the usage-based insurances, mostly for younger drivers. Because if you share your personal driving data, you can save a lot of money on your insurance premium, quite attractive for the future. And also, if you think about not only from a use case, but also from a creation point, there will be the stuff of collaboration tools, of design thinking, of interdisciplinary development teams, of innovation hubs. This will be also a very important stream in the future to build and create those differentiating services and products the user will really like and pay a lot of money for that. So the digital stuff also comes into mobility, not only in the iPhone. And if you're still producing just cars with really no brand differentiation and no use case differentiation, it will be a very, very bad time. And we can see this even today if you think about the very, very low margins of many or most of the cars in the market. So yeah, transformation has already started. I think you are aware of that. And yes, why? Why? Because we have, which is from an economic perspective, very, very important. We have a technical maturity of many, many stuff. Batteries are mature, electric cars are mature. We can handle it, we can produce it. We have a mass production of many new technologies, also in a lot of sensor and IT and hardware stuff, which is really good in quality and have achieved a high level of industrialization, which means in the end, it's good quality and lower prices. So we can use all those stuff in the cars, and we have very good cost ratio. And then following up the technology is the connecting the dots. More and more stuff is connected to each other with data, with science, with the internet, IoT, production 4.0 and so on, which allows you to bake multiple new streams and new principles, how to build, how to produce, and also for different service offerings. And as also some questions refer to, we have a huge societal change. There's a lot of discussion about the status of cars and owning and so on. There's really not that single answer in that, but it's clear that people if you rise up in some societal system and if you have more and more money, people want to be more and more mobile. So they want to travel more and more. This is for sure all over the world is granted. But this does not necessarily mean that you need your own car. This is changing. And there's some indications that status is not more indicated with owning the car, but with a high level of flexibility. And there's also where the sharing aspect comes in. So that's really a different change, because if you think back, maybe 30 years ago, people want to save a lot of money to pay the car instantly and have a great show at the dealer, your car, yeah, and you saved a lot of money on that. Nobody does anymore today. Yeah, you go to the dealer, you want your car, you lease it, you buy it, or you rent it, usually also with loans or with some finance solutions. So there's a more pragmatic view on that. And for sure also a big stuff are the legislations. You know about the CO2 emissions, the restrictions in speed limit, the restrictions in parking, in emissions, you know, all about the VW diesel stuff, which is also a legislative topic. And these are the reasons why we have those huge change. And what does it mean? Yeah, basically all the system changes. You need, as you think about the two business models, which are most attractive in the future, you will need different core competences. Yeah? Production is still relevant, but not that much as in the past. You need more digital competence, more innovation. You need more people who can set up partnerships and manage partnerships, who can handle IP and license IP. Very, very important, which wasn't in the past. Business models can be very different also. It's not only about producing and selling cars. It's much more about who is providing what. How can I get revenue over time? How can I set some multiple business models with different players? So to earn much more during the lifetime and not only about selling the asset. And for sure, we all know massive disruptions usually comes along with new companies, so new startups, because new startups have not the burden, I would say, also not the experience, but not the burden of old hierarchic systems and old thinking, and they can focus on the new. And this is also why a Tesla and a Uber and a Flixbus have so much success in the market, because they can really, really focus and learn very, very fast. And they did not need to change an old system in assets, in production, in dealership, in peoples, in unions and qualification and so on. It's a huge asset. They will make more mistakes for sure, but they're faster. That comes along, different organization, more agile principles, a different way of setting up business, not that much competition as we have in the past, but much more collaboration and partnerships. And this is simply said a paradigm shift.
I think I have one question that very well fits here. So Julien is asking, could we have your point of view about Tesla? How do other car brands perceive it? Do they see it as a threat or inspiration?
So don't buy stocks on that opinion, okay?
This is not a stock proposal.
This is not a stock, another stock evaluation here. Now, Tesla has done for sure many things right, no question of that. They are pretty fast in the market. They have learned very fast. They have learned a lot. They have focused on some core principles. They focused on propulsion, on the electric hardware, very interesting, not on design, not on quality. So this leads them to a really, I would say, overall very well accepted products in the market. And think about the pricing. Tesla is priced relatively high compared to other brands. And it's not so easy to be accepted in that price range. Yeah? Think about Volvo and Land Rover and so on. They will get those prices, and also the German ones, but not that much more companies. So they have done a really good job. They have now, for sure, used the right time at the right moment, build up the S model, luxury, then scale down to the Model 3, which is mass motorization. Yes, they have a first advantage, the first mover advantage, because many other companies are in the stack of the change, as I told you, and they can still focus on their way. But as you also know, they have a lot of problems with quality and production and servicing and so on. Yeah, sure, because they don't have the history and don't have the knowledge about that in detail. Tesla, for sure, is much more seen as a digital innovative company, as a car brand. And I think this is the most relevant information, because all the German brands are still seen as car brands developing in a digital age. And Tesla is seen as a digital company with software and hardware skills, and not as a pure automotive company. And for sure, this is the right approach for the future, because the future, with all the organizational model Tesla have and the experts they have and the partnerships, they can build basically anything in mobility, which will be fit in the new mobility ecosphere. And so they're pretty good at that. And if you think about they're producing about 500,000 cars in those price range, it's really, really good. And I can tell you, it was a huge I've seen that in my work. It was a huge management shock some years ago as the Model 3 got so many pre-announcements and pre-orders even before any prototype was built. Just for granted, just for, yeah, I think he can do it. Yeah, that was really unique in the industry. And the people, the management people, can't believe those behavior because it's very, very rare, even for sports cars. And they're pretty good and hiring people from old industry, from the old automotive stuff, and combining those ones with the people from new IT industry. That's very good what Tesla happens. So they combine digital experts from Apple and Microsoft and NVIDIA and so on with key players from BMW, Porsche, and so on, and mix them up in one team. And that's a really good combination. So I think they will have some problems anymore in the future, but they will have, I think, a very good time before. So quite long.
We have two more questions, and I think I'd like to combine them. I think one is from Valeska, and the other is from Stefan. And both go into the direction of urban mobility and how to organize that piece of critical infrastructure. And Valeska starts by saying, do you actually think that still in the future, people can go in the city with their cars, or will the city force like an artificial intelligence upon them where they lose control over the vehicle just steers in the maximum efficient way from one way to the other? That's the first hypothesis. Or Stefan even goes further and says, well, do we need cars in the first place? Actually, like cities should ban cars completely. They take up so much space. Shouldn't public transportation be organized in a completely different way? Obviously you're not, a city design expert necessarily, but maybe you have a view or a hypothesis on this.
Yeah, I think really good questions. Yeah, I think city will try to keep cars out. I think this is overall a tendency. So mass transportation needs to be better organized. I think shuttle taxis will be still accepted. Think about also of children, of older people. And so if you have a glass of wine after a party, there's a case for that. So they will limit the own cars for sure. If they restrict it, I'm not sure. It's a question how much limitation goes that you can talk to. It's a restriction. Yes, if you have a very good alternative in public transportation or in shuttle services or the scooters and so on, more and more people will automatically switch. So you don't need that law and order stuff. I think cities do have a mixture. I think most of the cities do a mixture. Zurich is a good example, Munich as well, London as well. Own cars are still okay, but building more roadways, providing a better public transportation. So there's increasing parking rates is also a good way to limit cars. I think there's more the restriction than abandon. So that the artificial intelligence will take over your driving, yes, could be. Yeah, but the question is, does it make so much sense? Even if in most of the cities, you can drive with 20, 30 kilometers because of traffic jams. So I don't think that's the huge case. In the end, the car will also drive autonomously in maybe in 10 years.
And maybe the cars will even communicate one to the other.
Yeah.
Maybe they have the same navigation operating platform that exchanges in a way. So the question is, do you need a city to provide law and order, or maybe are there already systems in place that help do that?
Yeah, the question is how much of the mobility will be orchestrated by the cities. I think that's a valid question. Cities handle this in a very different way. I think there will be, both will try to get the cake. Yeah, the car companies will try to get the cars inside and also will do some connected car stuff. And the cities will try to abandon. Maybe there's a meet up in the middle, but I think, yes, there will be much less cars in the future in the cities, I think. You can see this also if you think about Berlin. Berlin has about 330 cars, I think, per 1,000 inhabitants, which is really, really low. As a typical metropolitan city. Even in New York, I think it's just 200 per 1,000. Very, very low, even today.
A parking space is $3,500. I visited a friend recently. And
Yeah.
I mean, if you if you just make money work, I think it will be less cars. Yeah? If you make it more expensive, few people will like to do it.
Yeah. Okay. Do we have any more questions, David?
Give me a sec here. Maybe creating a global system will help create more personal digital services, an open store, something like, I think what I understand is that envision something like there will be an app library that is completely open and everybody can download and program and collaborate on it, autonomous bots, etc. Do I get that right here? I think that was Abir Yassin. I'm not sure I understood the question correctly. So I think something it's like a collaborative development environment, whether that will help.
Yeah, I think I don't know if it will be those one master platform for providing some app services. I'm not sure in that, because today we have also some Microsoft Store, some Apple Store, some Google Store. But yes, your thought is basically right. So there will be for sure co-creation teams for developing apps, because don't forget, automotive is also highly reliable, and it's a safety question, and that's a question of not only about the app doesn't work anymore, because it's also a much more broader impact to traffic and accident potential and so on. So there will be, I think, a minimum standard of development which you need to guarantee quality, insurance, legal stuff, and so on. But I can really think of that car companies, maybe also suppliers or digital companies, would open some space and say, okay, you can set up small teams, create your own app, provide it to us. You can get some revenue share, unless the limit of requirements are guaranteed. But I can think of that, yes, because that's really one question. I mean, Apple does the same. And the big car companies don't have so many experts on software development on that, so that I don't think they will win the run for those experts in the end. So the digital companies are much more attractive for digital talents. So they have a need to outsource and get some insights. This could be over a development platform. Yes. Okay. And I can, yes, do not stop, you will be rewarded. Yes, I think this is very, very important, because especially in Germany, and I think also to some extent in France and Spain, we will have a lot of people in the country who have always see problems over more. Yeah. Artificial intelligence does not work, driverless cars won't work, and so on and so on and so on. Yes, we are in the midst of a really huge industry and sector change. And there will a lot of problems. As you can see, not only as Tesla, also for Volkswagen has a lot of problems with the new ID software and so on. It is basically for all of the players a big change. If you're a startup, if you're a small company, or if you're a really global player. But history in innovation has shown that if you avoid those stuff, and if you stop thinking and stop building something new, you will be out of the business very soon. So yes, there's a probability, a relatively high probability, to lose money, to experiment, and things will not work, and you will do it again and again, and you will maybe set up a second partnership because the first one doesn't work. Yes, there is a lot of cost and effort to pay, but I don't think you have any other chance as to be in the business anymore, and you need to make your own experience in how to develop, how interdisciplinary teams work, providing new business models, making new cooperations with some players which are fundamentally different and out of your industry. This is not only a question of I make it and then I'm fit in that. No, it's a question of getting experience, and those experience is also an approaching of different parties. So it's fundamentally different for most of the people, especially the OEMs are relatively weak at that, because they are used to work in a very stable environment. This is really the chance of smart, smaller companies usually. And that's also the case, and also the probability for the future, that you don't need to be that big to have a big impact. Yeah? Think about some Sixt or some Flixbus. Even Porsche is a relatively small company. Even Tesla is a relatively small company in the car business, yeah? And they really have a big impact. And there's also startups in Germany. Think about Lilium and Sono and so on. Yeah? They will have really a big startup if you just try out and experiment and learn fast and have the right people and the right attitude. This will be really overall the success factors for the future. And not to have the 10th or 20th patent on some hardware stuff. Yeah? Just to keep that in your mind. It's really, really important to keep on going. Just think about Thomas Edison, who has used about 10,000 times to get the electric bulb lighted. Yeah? Think just about this, 10,000 times. And finally, yes, players in those industry have some responsibility. Because of the industry is so huge and we all like to be on the way to travel and to have mobility and on cars and all the way, I think the players in those industry have also a responsibility. And for sure, it should be more consumer focused and customer focused, and also in a more sustainable way, I think, to handle the business overall in the future. And I really want to point out that sustainability is not only seen here as some energy referring question. This is for sure a really important part. But in the last years, my personal view is that we have so much discussed about energy consumption, liters per 100 kilometer and CO2 and so on. There's much more. Yeah? Think about the efficiency of production, of recycling. There's a lot of energy you will need. And there's a difference in production and maintaining and recycling, also for the battery stuff, also for the green energy. This topic is much more broader, as usually the media and the newspapers cover it. And I just want to get those point to you to care about this. And this is only about how to manage people in a sustainable way. Yeah, keep them fair, treat them fair, give them feedback and so on. It seems like basic questions and not referring to mobility, but there are more and more those factors who are relevant for your business success in the future. Yeah, there will be on a practical way, and there will be in the next month or years maybe, there will be restrictions how much energy you will need for producing some parts or for some operating or for transporting. And there will be also maybe coming up also with the robotaxis, a much larger refurbishment of the cars as we have it today, also because of the energy and sustainability discussion. So just keep in mind, this is a really multi-sided perspective on that. So, and I think that was my last slide. Let's go in discussion if you have any more.
Wonderful. I think there were already so many questions. If there are more, like I think now's the time to post. In the meantime, I think we can advertise a bit, Daniel. Basically, Patrick asked, how do you envisage the restructuring of the automotive industry? Well, first off, there's a dedicated webinar happening on Wednesday. I just shared it in the chat. Feel free to sign up. But maybe you can say a few words about what will be the topics that you plan to cover.
Yeah, and you know, the automotive industry is not only in a transformation phase, but also since the last 2 years, some companies have more or less, I would say, problems to cover all those transformation at the same time. And now with the Corona stuff, which is really comes up from nowhere, and everybody's affecting to us, the companies got more and more under pressure. And this is not only a financial perspective, this is more and more a multi-sided perspective, because you now need to have innovative products produced in a sustainable way for different cars, for different customers and different supply chains. And you need the experts and the new smart people who are doing creative stuff and the partnerships, the startups and so on. This is a bunch of aspects which is now for many, many companies simply too much. And now we have the problem that also the markets broke away, because supply and demand is currently a little bit out of order, yeah, which has never been before. And we will go into deeper detail of that. What is really relevant to change, because what I show you here, some parts are maybe more or less in the future, and some parts are really important for today if you are some player and manager in those fields. And there will be also a longer workshop session after the webinar dealing with those topics, because I've got so many questions for that, and the people really want to know what is it about and how can we save, in some way, sorry to say, rescue it. Yeah? It's really, really on the edge now.
Great to hear. I already signed up. Yeah? So
welcome.
No, I'm really looking forward. It's going to be a very interesting discussion because it has very, very different implications for OEMs, but then obviously suppliers. And I mean, there's so many jobs, I think, also affected by the whole situation right now. So it's ultra relevant. Huh?
Yeah, and also for the community at Malt. Yeah, I think I don't know where you are from. Maybe you're experts, you're managers, you're freelancers or self-employed people. I think that's also affecting you, because also the jobs to be done and the projects are changing in some way. Yeah, so it's also from many different aspects. I think it could be interesting for you.
Indeed. Well, any more questions? Otherwise, last chance to ask away questions.
You can also contact me personally if you want. Here's my contact data, or for the future.
Well,
there's one popping up here.
Lots of thank yous, definitely. So people saying thank you for the great webinar. I want to thank you as well, Daniel. It was a pleasure. See
Thanks,
all of
indeed.
you hopefully seen soon on at Malt Academy. I hope you all have the right link to sign up for more webinars. Daniel, amazing that you'll be hosting another one on Wednesday. That's great. Well, and then I would say, well, have a good evening, everybody. Yeah.
Thanks. Stay healthy, very important. Stay innovative. Never
Indeed.
give up.